Hi folks, in this video we're going to have a look at trimming cartridge cases using a file trim die. In this case we've got a file trim die for the 223 Remington cartridge. This particular die was manufactured by the Pacific Tool and Die Company, which I think was purchased by Hornady, so I don't think you can buy that particular brand anymore, but I'm pretty sure Hornady makes an equivalent die. As you are probably aware, cartridge cases, especially bottlenecked cartridge cases, they tend to grow in length when they are fired and sized repeatedly, and eventually they will reach a point where they are no longer safe for your chamber. If they get too long, they will begin to pinch the bullet, and that'll drive up chamber pressures. So it's important to keep your cartridge cases trimmed to a safe limit. You can see with this particular cartridge case here, we've got our dial caliper. This particular case is 1.763 thereabouts, and if we compare that to the data in a reloading handbook, I've got the Lyman reloading handbook here, you can see that the safe case length is 1.760, that's this middle number here, and the recommended trim to length is 1.750 inches. So these cases need to be trimmed. I've got a whole box of 50 of them here, and I'm just going to trim them all at the same time. There's really not much point in measuring all of them because I've measured a few random ones and it appears that most of them are over the limit, so I'm going to trim them all at the same time. So you use a file trim die in your standard reloading press, and you'll need a shell holder, and if you have a short cartridge case like this 223, it doesn't hurt to have an extended shell holder to go with it, and I'll demonstrate why that is. If we put a standard shell holder into the press, and then we put a cartridge case into the shell holder and run it up into the press, you'll see that very little of it extends beyond the top of the press. So if we were to screw this case trimming die, this file trim die, into the press to the point where it is effective, there's very little of the die extending above the top of the press, and basically this would have to be screwed into the press until it contacts the shell holder here. So we'd screw it in all the way down until it contacts the shell holder, and then we'll put the cartridge in it and run it up into the die. And as you can see, there's not very much of this die sticking up above the top of the press, and if you put the lock ring on it, you can see that our lock ring is almost in contact with the top of the die. And as you can see, if we try to use a file on that, we're really at risk of filing off the top of the lock ring. So I'm just showing you that to show you why with a short cartridge case it's a good idea to use an extended shell holder like this one. Now this is also a Pacific shell holder, but you can see how much taller it is compared to a standard shell holder. And what that allows the cartridge to do is to stick quite a bit further up into the press, and thereby gives you better clearance and lets you pretty much get at the case with a file without putting your lock ring in jeopardy. So I'll just show you that. This is a pretty tight fit, this one. Usually takes a little tap with a rubber hammer. We'll get that tapped into place and get right back to you. So with the extended shell holder in place, you can see that the 223 case comes much farther up above the top of the reloading press. So we can put our die into place, and we'll have lots of extra clearance here. Went too far that time, actually. So there's how far up the die goes, and it's in contact with the top of the shell holder at that point in time. With our lock ring on top, put our cartridge case in the shell holder and run it up. And I like to run these down pretty tight against it, so I'll give it a little touch past, little turn in past touching. We'll get in good and close here on it. Alright, when we're in good and close on the top of the die here, you can see that there's some brass protruding above the top of the die. And that's the portion that we're going to file off. And I've got a standard file here. With a few strokes of the file, we've cut the brass back to the point where it's actually flush with the top of the die. And we just have to repeat this process until we've got all these cases trimmed out. When you're holding the file, it doesn't hurt to put your thumb on the front of the file and your finger on the back. You need a handle on your file as well. You want to keep the file as close to 90 degrees to the die as possible. You don't want to be tilting it because you're not actually going to be cutting on the brass. You're just going to be wearing your file on the edges of the die. So you want to keep this file as flat as possible. It's good practice for how to use a file. And you want to frequently clean the file out. It doesn't hurt to have a file card or a file brush to knock any of the chips out of the file. But if you have any files at all, you should already have a file card to keep your files in good shape. And you can tell that this is trimmed to length because it'll stop cutting. You can feel the brass grab, and when you're no longer feeling the brass grab in the file will slide very slickly over the top of the hardened surface of the die. And at that point in time, you'll know that you're filed down to the required length. So once you've got your cartridge case filed down to the correct length, you take a deburring tool and remove any burr that's on the inside of the case neck and also on the outside as well. Wouldn't hurt to take a case brush and knock out some of these filings off the inside here. You could also throw them in your case tumbler, clean any of those chips off out of the way before you reload them. So let's have a look at the length of this case now that we've trimmed it. And it comes out to 1.755, so it's about 5,000 less than the maximum length and about 5,000 more than the length recommended as a minimum in the Lyman book. So that's a good safe case length, and we are good to go. Just a matter of trimming the rest of this box of 50. So you might ask yourself, why use a file trim die as opposed to a rotary type case trimmer or another case trimming system like the Lee system? And there are a couple of things which are handy about this. It's very compact. You don't have to have another spot on your bench for this. It just goes right in your reloading press. It's very consistent and repeatable. There are no adjustments for you to make. It's basically set up by the manufacturer. You put the cartridge case up into the die and you trim off what's left on the top, so you don't have to mess around with any adjustments, which is convenient. If you only do a few different types of cartridge case, this is not a bad way to go. And it's also very handy if you're into any reloading where you have to convert cartridge cases from one type to another. For instance, if you are making 223 cases out of, 222 cases out of 223, these types of dies are handy because you can actually use a hacksaw on the top of these to cut off excessive amounts of case if you have a lot of case to trim off when you're converting from one cartridge case to another. So, you know, they are another method which is out there that you can use to trim cases, and might not be for everybody, but certainly a viable option for case trimming. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll talk to you later.